Beatriz begins, let me introduce real quick Beatriz Guerrero. She is from Cali. She is currently a doctoral candidate at the Department of Curriculum and Instruction in the Language and Literacy Division at the University of Illinois, working under the tutelage of Professor Willis. And I had a very pleasant surprise when I read the abstract that Beatriz is going to share some ideas from her dissertation and her research in Cali. A very interesting application in probably a far more critical, if you will, position toward critical literacy. So Beatriz, the floor is yours and we're ready to listen to you.
Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, hi. Thank you for that intro. I'm Beatriz, I'm from Cali, and I'm a Professor Willis student. And I'm going to share with you some of my dissertation, some aspects of my dissertation, which are based on critical theories. So, should I start right now, or I couldn't hear what you said entirely, Raul? So should I start right now?
Yes, you can start. Just
okay.
Tell me when to make the transition of the slides so we can help you.
Okay. So the first one, the title is provisional. I guess you know that I'm not. Still, I have not defended my dissertation, so everything is being revised. But so far, I'm going to inquire the relationship of literacy and race in Aguablanca. Do you know Aguablanca? It's a district in Cali, and it's characterized by being low socioeconomic status and by having a high population of Black Colombians. And this is a qualitative case study, but I will talk about that later. So number 2 slide. So basically, well, I'm not gonna go focus on that, but researching literacy in Colombia is useful. And although this is like, well, in English, but I use the term literacidad in Spanish to build on the academic culture that other authors have been constructing, like Professor Raul Mora and other authors from Peru. But the thing is that researching race in Colombia is complex. And this is due to the there are two contrary coexisting racial ideologies in the country. And one ideology praises mestizaje, and this has been referred to as by Peter Wade and also Green. And they talk about how in Colombia this racial mixing has been approached as this idealizing of mestizaje, in which we all come from like three groups, Black, indigenous, and whites. And we create this beautiful diversity called mestizos. And at the same time, this ideology coexists with rejection towards Blackness and Indianness. So basically what has been documented by Wade is how the country's racial ideology praises mestizaje, mixing, but the one that tends towards whitening, not darkening. And that is very complex. So basically what I think is that, and this is something I read, literacy, to study literacy and race and under a critical theory view entails, or critical theories entails, to reflect not only on the role of literacy and different cultural ways with literacy, but also how literacy, the role of literacy for the institutionalization and contestation of the structures that create racial hierarchies in the country. And what I also think is that this reflection leads towards, like in the educational setting, towards the understanding of how students construct multiple and oppositional literacy interests and identities in the school setting. So next slide. I'm briefly going to talk about this because I have little time, and if you want, you can ask me questions later on. Who are Black Colombians? This is very complex because the racial ideology I told you about, pride, values, mestizaje. So Black Colombians, in the policy level, in 1991 with the new constitution that acknowledges and values diversity in the country, in Colombia, the languages, and then the educational policy changed after that, and then the law, the policy number 70, Ley 70, that acknowledges the historical wrong with Black groups in the country, that they have rights to their own lands, that they have inhabited since they were taken as slaves to the country. So the definition of what blackness is very complex because the focus of the country in regards to policy has given to the definition of blackness is based on ethnicity, not necessarily in racial features. And this is problematic because ethnicity is, you don't see ethnicity immediately when you meet someone. So discrimination, and this is something that many Black groups argue, at least in the city of Cali, is that discrimination is based on your skin color and your hair type, not if you look white or mestizo and you say, well, I'm Black because I grew up in this neighborhood with my friends and stuff, and I practice the culture of Black people in Colombia, you're not going to be discriminated against immediately because you don't look Black. So how the Colombian policy has addressed Blackness is creates issues for addressing it in and studying it in many levels in the census, and to talk about race. And in my case, in the school setting, it was very, very difficult. So I have some data there that you can read in the slide. Basically, Black Colombians living in poor living conditions in many levels, higher mortality rates, lower life expectancy, poverty conditions, illiteracy rate, and illiteracy as alphabetization, I guess, yeah. Concentration, the thing is that where Black people concentrate in the country, this coincides with some endemic diseases and with lower achievement in standardized tests. Because the Ministry of Education doesn't include the racial variable when measuring the achievement in standardized tests like SARE or SARE 11 in what people was the expect. So they don't include the racial variable, and this is the only way to get an an idea of how Black people are doing tests is by analyzing, is by crossing how Black people have been doing the departments with the highest Black population and how these departments perform in the tests. So basically, based on all this inequity, what has been said is that when in a society differences among racial groups are that marked, it can be said that those are racialized social systems. And generally, the more dissimilar the races, life chances, the more racialized the social system, and vice versa. So, in Cali, I'm going to go over this. Cali is the city with the highest concentration of Black population in the country, based on population density. In Cali, there is a pattern. It has been documented by Urbana and all these research groups in Universidad. There is a pattern of social, not only social economic discrimination, but social racial discrimination. 75% of the Black population lives in the East conglomerate of the city. And this, not coincidentally, this conglomerate is characterized by low middle socioeconomic status neighborhoods. The majority of the Black population living in the East corresponds with the lowest socioeconomic levels, and with at least half of the Black households residing in the poorest neighborhoods. So in Cali, I don't know, maybe you can think about Medellín, but in Cali, the higher the socioeconomic status, the lower the presence of Black households, and the higher the presence of non-Black households, and the higher the presence of non-Black households. So, and this corresponds also with school capital. So the higher the socioeconomic status, the higher the school capital, and vice versa. And recently, this is Fernando Rea, 2014, he has published findings on incomes, the different differences in incomes, and even though there is no gap between Black and non-Black income with lower economic levels like elementary or preschool. But basically, if you have elementary or preschool, you earn very similar. You have a very similar income to non-Black people. However, when educational level increases, you have a gap there that shows that basically with the same educational level, mestizos earn more funds than Black people. So I focus, I'm talking about Distrito de Aguablanca, is the group of comunas 13, 14, 15. I'm code mixing. And this district of Aguablanca has the highest concentration of Black population in the city. A huge, high population of young male under 30 years old. This correlates to poverty, to high residential concentration of Black people. And this relates to these complex dynamics of violence and hypermasculinity that have been talked about in barriadas in Cali, the neighborhoods with low socioeconomic status. Basically, Black people are condemned, and among Black people, Black male population are in the bottom numbers in regards to life expectancy, mortality rates, and imprisonment rates. Oh, I didn't tell you to move to this slide. So we are now in slide number 6. Sorry.
We're good. We're good.
You might be like thinking, So what does this have to do with education? But we're going to see that later on in my data. So education and ethnic education, we have to understand that the country considers Indianness and blackness as ethnicity. I told you about ley 70, so they have, the Ministry of Education has included these Cátedra de Estudios Afro-Colombianos, basically to promote group identity within Black people, but also it's supposed to be taught in regular settings, not only in ethnic schools or reservations. However, this has not worked. Rodriguez, et al. The study of the racial observatorio racial in Universidad de Los Angeles, they have documented that this Cátedra de Estudios Afro-Colombianos, it just doesn't work. It's not being applied. There's no following to that because each school is entitled to choose their proyecto educativo institucional. So it just they don't do it. There is also things with the ethnic educators, ethnic schools, that's very complex, and basically everything is, the problem is because the definition of blackness and Indianness is based on ethnicity, and ethnicity defined as cultural aspects. And there, Beatriz Lozano Lerma in Cali, she proposes to differentiate Black Colombians who preserve their traditional ways of knowing, because it happens in the Pacific coast of Colombia and the Atlantic coast. There are groups of Black people who live in their own ways, I think. But it's important also to, the Black people who live in these rural settings is the people who are being protected by the policy. However, there are Black people migrating to the cities. As I showed you, Cali is the highest Black population in Colombia, and is the third one in the entire continent. The first one is Rio de Janeiro. The second one is the first one is Washington D.C. The second one is Rio de Janeiro, and the third city in the continent with the highest Black population is Cali. So there is this need to acknowledge that Black population are migrating to the city, and they have particular educational needs, which is what I'm going to show in my data. We have to avoid essentialization of Black people through this idea of ethnicity and cultural groups, because I don't know, in Medellín, but Cali, everyone says that, so you're Black and you don't dance salsa. So they are basically biologizing ethnicity. They are not talking about race because it's just one human race, and that's one of the racial ideologies that's circulating in the school setting in which I was, in which I collected data, that we are all the human race, so there's no races. However, the trend is to biologize or racialize ethnicity. So they say, when I ask people in the school what does it mean to be Black, they say, oh, to have dark skin color. They don't say to have these practices. However, due to these policy issues and to the ethnicity focused work with Blackness and Indianness, the trend is to stereotype Black people and Indian people. I'm just focusing on Black people in my dissertation. The goal is to acknowledge Black Colombians as social groups, not as ethnic groups, to try to understand the different experiences of Black people in different settings. the goal is also to understand that there is one thing that's common to Black people, which is discrimination due to skin color or racial features. Some people in Cali say that if discrimination is melaninic, I don't know if that's a word, if discrimination is due to melanin, high melanin skin color, then the struggle against discrimination should be melanin-based too. And this is to counter what we had last year with people, not Black-looking people, saying that they were representing Black people in the government. So the discussion is still going with this, what does Black people represent in the country. I'm going to go to the problem, and I put it just a huge paragraph here, and I'm going to read it. So for the Colombian government, literacy and schooling solving equity problems for all Black Colombians. In the national report in 2010, it was said that education and literacy were the solution for poverty. So Colombia is a country with racialized social structures. And although literacy and schooling do prove being variables to explain Black Colombians' living conditions, their ways of intersecting are not simple. Explaining the role of literacy and schooling in Black Colombians and equal status is not as simple as saying that the higher the literacy and the school levels, the lower the inequities, because not only as shown above, Blacks earn less when in the same educational level as mestizos, but also because it disregards that as a social group, Black Colombians have different identities. So the statistics permit visualizing the general relegated position of Black Colombians in the country and in the educational setting, but the numbers do not allow for a deeper understanding or characterization of their identities, Black students' identities, and how Black students in different urban or rural conditions mediate. And with mediation, I mean resisting, contesting, and or accepting the implicit and explicit literacies that constitute constant racial dynamics in the school experience. Explaining the role of literacy and schooling in Black Colombians requires the analysis that include, among others, showing racial ideologies in the school system, documenting literacy practices in light of racial relationships, analyzing Black students' identities and how they impact their literacy practices and participation in the school life. Okay, so I'm not going to go over the theoretical point because you already heard Professor Lewis, and basically I'm focusing on critical theories, critical pedagogy, critical race theory, and critical literacy. Those are the three frames with which I am looking at my data. So I'm now in slide number 11 now. The review, there are a few, I've organized my review based on different things like studies with Black students or the setting. But the thing is that in Colombia there is little research that addresses the education of Black students. There's only one study that I have found explicitly talking about racial ideologies and the teaching of mathematics. And this is a friend of mine, she graduated last year. She analyzed the teachers' expectations of Black students learning algebra in the same place, not the same school, but the same district, Aguablanca in Cali. And her results are alarming. Basically, teachers' expectations are not high enough to have students learning algebra, but also they are discriminating the students in the classroom during instruction. when students, similar studies have been done in the US in regards to how many times the teacher addresses the students when the students raise their hands or ask for contributing in the classroom. But this is so far the first study that I know of in regards to Black students and instruction, and she's showing are in the classroom and in the school. There are other studies there, but I'm going to go to the methodology section. My dissertation is a qualitative research design, although I collected data in many ways. In different settings. For my dissertation, I'm going to focus on one boy, fifth grade passing boy. And so there you can see I collected data in the school, in the classroom, and at home. One school in Aguablanca. The school is particularly located in the intersection between Comunas 13, 14, and 15. The classroom, 41 students. The teacher is a Black male teacher. He is actually hired as an ethnic educator, Black ethnic educator. And he has license in biology and chemistry. In the home setting, I observed the boy, Jason Daniel. At home, I observed him in the school, in the classroom, throughout the day. So my participants are Jason Daniel, the principal, the coordinators, teachers, librarian. I collected data April to October 2020, and I have done maybe cycle coding. I think I'm in the fourth cycle coding right now. And that included open coding, focus coding, and at some point I did eclectic coding, value coding, and payment coding. Well, I did member checking to guarantee quality of the research. This is the translations, with translation, because I collected data in Spanish, and well, I'm from Cali, and I am a Spanish speaker, but I have to translate things for the dissertation. So I asked some grad students here, friends who are one Spanish teacher as me. She's from Ecuador, and she's Spanish speaker, but she is studying her postdoctorate in anthropology. And another friend who is English speaking, native English speaker, but she learns Spanish, to check on my translation of the quotes. And researchers, so this is, I self-identify as a Black Colombian woman. This is complex when I say I'm a Black Colombian woman. People say, no, you're not. All the things people say, you're not, you're being all those ideologies, racist ideologies, saying things, but I do self-identify as a Black woman, and although I acknowledge and I'm totally aware that I'm not as dark as other Black Colombians who have to experience racism every day in their lives, I do self-identify as Black woman, and I have had experiences with racism and discrimination. Let's go to the name of this thing. So my questions, I have two big main questions in my study. One of them, the first one that you are, I guess, on slide number 13, Raul, that you are seeing is related to how are literacy and race related in the settings in which the boy, Jason Daniel, participates. So how are literacy and race defined, and how literacy practices relate to how race is defined in the setting. So I basically want to analyze the intersection of literacy and race in the setting. So classroom, school, and home. And then what I intend to see, and that's the contribution, the biggest contribution of what I'm doing, is how this boy negotiates his definitions and practices of literacy and race in those settings in which literacy and race are already being practiced. So slide number 14. I'm going to show you findings for the first question. Literacy and school racial ideology. So I have there this quote from the principal of the school who says, so he is not a black school, so he is a mestizo school, because according to the census, only 35% of the school is black. And what I am problematizing is how the racial frames in the school are constructed through literacy, basically. I identified 5 racial frames in the school, circulating in the school. 4 of them have been documented by Eduardo Silva, sociology professor here, and he has talked about those frames circulating here in the US. But I have found a new one, which I call mestizaje, and relates to all this I told you before, the racial mixing in Colombia. So the liberal frame basically understands that we are all equal, we are all the same, we have all the same possibilities and values, and it disregards the history of slavery, discrimination, etc. And it says we are all equal, we are all the same. There's this frame dismisses affirmative action, because it says, no, if you do affirmative action, you are discriminating the mestizos. If you do affirmative action to vindicate black people, you are discriminating mestizos. So I have this quote from the principal. So the racial ideology is circulating in the school. And the principal says, cuando uno habla mucho, demasiado de algo de la diversidad, pero no para reconocer la diversidad, sino para acentuar el punto de que nosotros somos diversos, y somos nosotros, se cae en riesgo de construir una nueva mirada sectarista, cuando uno defiende tanto lo afro, lo indígena, puede correr el riesgo de cerrarse nuevamente y de, por lo tanto, reclamar la idea de no participar de la diversidad humana. Sí somos diversos, pero nosotros somos afro, no nos miren, no, nosotros somos afro. Entonces tiene que haber una política exclusivamente para los afro. Entonces, debemos saber que alguna vez en Estados Unidos existía. Va a llegar el día en que vamos a tener que tener luces para los afro. Ese es el riesgo al que podríamos llegar si nos sentamos tanto en la definición del mínimo espacio para la minoría. So in this quote, you can see that the principal of this school has a liberal frame. He does not acknowledge affirmative action. He thinks that will create more discrimination. But what's interesting here is how the liberal frame, the racial liberal frame, is being constructed through literacy. And we are going to go to the next slide. So it is the principal. This is the previous one was in the interview with me. But this quote is from the first meeting of the year, in which they were talking with parents in the schools, the principal, the coordinators, and then each teacher addressed the parents of the children in their classroom. The principal here in this meeting said, me llama la atención because they started with the anthem, and the parents did not sing the anthem. So the principal said, me llama la atención que no cantamos los himnos. Los himnos recuperan la historia y el de Cali habla de la gloria y el futuro. Precisamente una de las estrategias de la clase dirigente que no tiene interés en las transformaciones sociales es que no nos apropiemos de los himnos ni tengamos unidad. Hay que usar la camiseta todos los días para poder construir un país democrático respetuoso de las leyes. So the liberal frame was gravitated around ideas of democracy, ideas of equity. And then in this same meeting, the principal said, por último, los estudiantes están llegando vestidos de cualquier manera. Lo hemos dicho, a veces tienen problemas con llegar con el uniforme bien y eso le puede pasar a cualquiera. Pero entonces manden la carta explicando la situación, porque así nosotros hacemos seguimiento. Porque esta comunicación escrita es un tema clave de orden, disciplina y organización. So and I have a picture of the monthly billboard in the school, and during the month of May, the billboard was addressing values of values. They had this school project called Conferencia, which was based on avoiding arguments and facing harmony. And we all can participate in the school, we all can vote, we are a democratic school. And this view is problematic in regards to race because it does not acknowledge that race exists in the school. And what I'm going to show with Jason Daniel's learning practices is that he voluntarily decides not to participate in the classroom and in the school activities in which racial frames do not acknowledge his race, his black. So yeah, let's move on. The other frame is the naturalization frame, which tends to explain the situation of black people due to natural influences or because that's the way they are. So we have here the principal saying, now he didn't say that literally, but he implies that calling someone betun, you know how they tend to say black people all different types of names. Calling someone betun can be other law. Maybe you have heard that in Medellín, in Cali, it's very common to say, no, yo le digo a él negrito porque es por cariño. And that's something that has become natural. And the thing here is who has the power to call black people negrito, negro, whatever. And the excuse of mestizo people and here in the US white people is that they call themselves negro, negrito, but that's them. It's very different having a black people calling another black people and a negro, negrito than having a mestizo person saying black to a black individual. There are power issues there. But the thing is how these frames have been incorporated into the curriculum. And we have here the fifth grade 5 teacher classroom saying, curriculum must address those issues. They are born fixed. I don't know if I did a good translation. You are, you can help me with this, and my friends, it was hard to explain. She said, ellos nacen ladrones, and they have family breakdowns. Why do they have so many children? So I work on writing projects, although they are so overwhelmed with their problems, that why should I give them more school work? So basically she's saying that they have this really ugly situation, and she's not putting all that effort in teaching them because she will overwhelm them with more work. The next slide shows the minimization frame, and this frame tends to minimize the impact that racism has in the lives of Black people. The principle says racism does not exist because I don't discriminate. So if I don't discriminate, it does not exist, and the people tend to minimize the impact. The elementary coordinator, discrimination does exist, but if someone discriminates me, it's not a big deal. So they tend to minimize the impact. And obviously the elementary coordinator and the principal are mestizo, they are not Black people. The 5-1 teacher says it's not discrimination, it's about students' low self-esteem. So they minimize the impact that race has in the everyday school experience of Black students. And the 5-3 teacher says that she has all this course that's really sad for me. And she basically ended up saying that she said violence, like here in the Aguablanca district, violence is a reality, but forced displacement, eso es un cuento, like it's just, yeah. So, okay, move on to slide number 18, and I will be done soon. The cultural frame tends to explain racism and discrimination and the situation of Black people based on their cultural practices. So the principal, the ethnic curriculum is aimed at teaching their knowledge of real earth infusion. He said, a witness. So in the ethnic curriculum, because the school is constructing an ethnic curriculum, and they said, a role with the ethnic curriculum is teaching the students the knowledge of their ancestors. Agüitas aromáticas, hierbas, and that stuff. Basically, the cultural frame stereotypes the students in the school, stereotypes Black people in general, and indigenous people in general. The 5-3 teacher says people from, she said, the thing is that people from the interior of the country, they wake up early, and people from the Pacific coast wake up late, and they are more desire-driven. But then these friends have inconsistencies. Because then she said that parents do not attend her meetings with her, the teacher, because they work all day. But they wake up at noon, so how is it that they work all day? And then the elementary coordinator, when he was talking about the feelings of inferiority of Black people, he said, because they choose to feel like that. They choose to feel inferior to everyone else. So this is the cultural frame. All of them have inconsistency. Finally, the mestizaje frame, and the mestizaje frame was very, very evident during the ethnic week. I don't know in Medellín, but in Cali, most of the schools, the public schools in the city, commemorate during the week of May 21st, May 22nd. They commemorate the Afro-Colombian, the abolition of slavery. However, this school changed it from Afro-Colombian week to ethnic week because they are under this mestizaje frame. We are not Black or Indian, we are diverse, we are mestizos, all of us, we are mixed. This romanticized idea. And this mestizaje frame was very, very evident during the ethnic week. The secondary coordinators said at a meeting with the teachers, with all the teachers in the school, he said, we have to institutionalize the ethnic space in the school. And he said that to conclude that there was the need to change from Afro-Colonial Week to Ethnic Week. There is the mestizaje frame has a very recurrent idea that we are all humans and human race is the same. So there's no need to talk about race. But what differentiates us are ethnic groups. And that, as I told you before, creates issues for talking about discrimination. We are all ethnic, that's under the mestizaje frame, we are all ethnic, we are all diverse, and they tend to see cultures as static. This romanticized idea of Black people as rural, as illiterate, as ancestral knowledge, and they have issues with acknowledging the diaspora, for instance, or the negotiation people in new settings have undergone to enable to cope with this new setting. Well, I have ideas for discussion in the last slide, but before that, because I said that the goal was to understand how people not only how racial ideologies are not only institutionalized through literacy, but also contested. And I didn't show you, or because I'm only showing you the first question. Although in the school there was a librarian, and the librarian, she self-identified as a Black woman, and she openly was contesting all these five ideologies through literacy, through the activities in the library, which was very interesting and unique. In the classroom, children were contesting these ideologies, and even though the teacher was Black, he moved in between following these racial frames and contesting them. However, what I noticed, which is, and this finding is very important to me, is that when the teacher was promoting or following these racial ideologies in the classroom, children were off task. Whereas when the teacher was contesting or replying to these racial ideologies in the classroom, the students were off task. And this finding is, to me, eye-opening of what's happening in the education of Black children. They are not naive, they are not, they know enough, they know they're Black, they know they are being discriminated against, and they know when the teacher is saying things that deny their race, their experiences in life due to race, and they know when the teacher is acknowledging that. And basically, the students in the classroom were not attentive or not following to the teacher when the teacher was promoting in the language or social studies or any class with comments, with direct literacy instruction, with racialized literacies. The students immediately went off task. So ideas for discussion, and these are just ideas of only things that I showed to you. I didn't show you all this. I'm telling you about contestation and the kids in the classroom. But the basically the dominant racial ideologies, dominant racist ideologies in the school are institutionalized. institutionalized the curriculum and literacy practices in the school. And in the school there was mural in the Coliseum of people practicing sports, and all of the drawings of people practicing sports were Black people. So promoting this idea of Black people being good at sports. During the ethnic week, they talk about how Black people, the dances of Black people in the Pacific Coast, the food, all the things they tend to stereotype, but they didn't talk about Black people in the academic world. They didn't talk about Black people writing literature. Only the activities of the library were focusing on highlighting the presence of Black people in different spheres, social spheres. But there was this divorce between the school and the library, which represents a mission in itself. I also want to highlight the power of naming. Like I told you before, it's different if a Black person says to another Black person, negro, amigo, negrito, whatever. That's totally different if a mestizo person is saying that. But the excuse usually is because, oh well, I heard that they refer to each other like that, so why can't I? Well, you can't. You have to acknowledge that if you're mestizo, you have to acknowledge that here it's known as white privilege. You have to acknowledge that you have mestizo privilege, and that your practices, what you say, who you are, represent structures that favor a group and disfavor other groups. Also, the racial frames, these racial frames that I showed you as like separated the liberal unionization cultural, they were articulated, and when they are articulated, the argument to defend racial frames or racism in the school is stronger for the staff, and its presence is stronger in the curriculum. During the ethnic week, the mestizaje frame was like all over there in the school. The billboards, presentations, they talk about the 4 departments in the Pacific coast of the country in a very stereotypical way. What I noticed is that participants who self-acknowledge as Black move between the phrase and contesting them. And when I cross this with literacy practices, the teachers' literacy practices at home, in the school, how they literacy for teaching, there are interesting results like Black people being more open to diverse literacies in the classroom than mestizo people, for instance. The teacher that I observed, the 5-1 teacher, was, he's Black, he self-acknowledged as Black, but at the same time he included a variety of literacies in the classroom, oral stories. Well, he also used the dictado, copia, and all these traditional literacies, ortografía, and checking on spelling and stuff. But at the same time, he was very open to diverse literacies in the classroom, unlike other teachers who were mestizos, and their views of literacy were more academic literacies. So basically, in this contestation idea, reacting to racial ideologies generates this rejection, this contestation that shapes identity. And these rejections configure struggling racial identities, which is what I'm talking about with my kids, yes, over here. The struggling racial identity through literacy of this platform and feel grateful. That's it.